Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's #2 economy. My name is Tony. It's been a big day of updates, so let's jump in. Of course, the huge news is the United States' announcement of sweeping new tariffs affecting trade across the world, which is currently rocking global markets. On my other channel, Market Update, we do a deep dive into the new tariffs and what it means for North America, Asia, and Europe. That episode link is just below. However, China was one of the hardest hit by the new tariffs. And first up for China Update today, we will unpack the details and implications of all this. And by the way, today's thumbnail is no exaggeration. This is devastating. As we will discuss, these tariffs on China will conservatively cut Chinese growth in half, which means Beijing will be forced to increase the already surging debt levels in order to meet its growth target. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a step back and walk through what has happened. Yesterday, Wednesday, US President Donald Trump imposed a sweeping new 34% tariff on most imports from China. This latest move builds on a 20% tariff previously introduced on Chinese goods linked to the fentanyl crisis, pushing total levies on some items to a staggering 54%. When combined with existing tariffs dating back to Trump's first term and those maintained under President Biden, total US tariffs on some Chinese products now exceed 70%. According to Bloomberg Economics, the average tariff rate on Chinese imports has surged to 65%. Due to the massive size of the US-China trade relationship, this makes these new tariffs alone the most protectionist US trade policy in nearly a century. China swiftly condemned the move. The Ministry of Commerce in Beijing vowed retaliation, warning that the new tariffs would disrupt global supply chains and harm economic stability. Quote, China firmly opposes this and will resolutely take countermeasures. End quote. Economists are bracing for major consequences. A simulation by US-based Bloomberg suggests that tariffs at this level could reduce China's GDP growth by up to 2.4 percentage points. That's half its growth target, and more importantly, it's the healthy half of the growth. Macquarie Group previously estimated a 2-point hit if tariffs reached 60%. And the current trajectory surpasses even those projections. Citi analysts now say a, quote, hard decoupling, end quote, between the two economies is underway. ING analysts in a note today said that the higher tariffs on China are set to compound deflationary pressures, with chief China economist Lin Song expressing, quote, products which once could have been sold in the US market will now need to be redirected elsewhere or absorbed by domestic demand. Ultimately, tariff barriers seem likely to exacerbate overcapacity issues. End quote. These are issues we've been following very closely on China Update and are one of the reasons why we've seen so much friction in China's trade relations over these last few years. China's consumer price index was negative in February and has hovered close to zero for years as policymakers struggle to boost consumer spending. Morgan Stanley analysts similarly write today that China's exports will suffer not only from new tariffs, but also from the shockwaves on the global economy that will lessen demand in other markets. Chief China economist Robin Xing said China would probably need to announce additional stimulus measures on top of those already announced during this year's National People's Congress. Robin Xing in the note added that Chinese exports would suffer a much greater shock than under the first Trump administration in 2018 through 19, and it would be much more difficult this time to negotiate a de-escalation. The Chinese currency, the yuan, weakened significantly following the announcement, dropping 0.7% in offshore markets. Meanwhile, US companies are also feeling the heat. Walmart, for example, is reportedly pressuring Chinese suppliers to slash prices by up to 10% to absorb the cost of tariffs, a move that has sparked pushback with Chinese officials. Adding to the pressure, the Trump administration announced an end to the rule that allowed packages under $800 to enter the US duty-free from China and Hong Kong. This change, effective the 2nd of May, directly targets e-commerce giants like Temu, which have built business models around low-cost, tariff-free shipments from China. The conflict shows no sign of cooling. China is reportedly delaying investment approvals for firms seeking to enter the US market and may respond with further restrictions on key exports, fiscal stimulus, or monetary easing to cushion the economic blow. With no direct communication yet between Trump and Xi Jinping since the US election, the risk of prolonged economic friction looms large. The global economy, already under strain, may soon feel the full weight of an intensifying US-China trade war. Now, it would not be China Update without a quote from either Peking University Professor of Finance Michael Pettis or veteran China analyst Bill Bishop. Well, with such massive news, we better have both. Professor Michael Pettis observed earlier today, quote, "Unfortunately, it is very hard to discuss tariffs in a non-hysterical way. They are neither the panacea that the Trump administration supposes they are, nor are they the instrument of Satan, as most American economists truly believe them to be. They are simply one of many industrial policy tools designed to tax consumption and subsidize production, and as such can be expansionary under certain circumstances and contractionary under others. In fact, other policies can be much more effective. I'd argue, for example, that tariffs are a relatively minor contributor to China's trade surplus. Far more important ways to tax consumption and subsidize production in China have been its undervalued currency, a financial repressed banking system that directs credit to favored sectors, factors that have limited wage growth relative to productivity growth, and overspending on logistical infrastructure. Tariffs are supposed to work by doing the same thing, but they are usually less effective ways of doing it." End quote. And this is from veteran China analyst Bill Bishop. Quote, "The PRC reaction is unlikely to be weak, and I doubt that Xi and his team will just roll over and do nothing while trying to negotiate. Their reactions to the 2 rounds of fentanyl tariffs previewed their maturing economic coercion response toolbox, so we should probably assume any response may include more controls of exports of some critical minerals, investigations into and entity listing of some US firms, along with tariffs, and perhaps a larger than expected devaluation of the RMB against the dollar. No matter the PRC reaction, the impact of these new tariffs will be quite damaging to the PRC economy, and so Xi has a lot of economic incentive to swallow his pride and start negotiating with Trump, and quickly." End quote. That's part 1 of today's video. Before we move to part 2, if you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribing is also a tremendous help. If you think you are already subscribed, it may be worth checking this now, as recently I've been told that many have been unsubscribed. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description below for those who want to help keep the channel financially sustainable. I rely primarily on your support, subscriber support, to keep going. This is a fully independent media project. It is a one-man band, and that means I rely on that support. So this is also deeply appreciated. Next up, the other big destabilizing news from this week, of course, is related to Taiwan. On Tuesday, China launched a sweeping series of military exercises around the island, signaling a sharp escalation in cross-strait tensions. The drills, named Strait Thunder 2025A, which implies that there will be at least B later this year, conducted by the People's Liberation Army, PLA, Eastern Theater Command, involves all branches of China's military, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force, and we're focused on joint combat readiness, simulated strikes, and maritime blockades. According to a PLA spokesperson, the operations are designed to be a, quote, serious warning and strong deterrence, end quote, against Taiwan's, quote, separatist forces, end quote. These maneuvers came just over 2 weeks after Taiwan's president, William Lai Ching-te, held a high-level national security meeting on the 13th of March, where he unveiled 17 strategies to counter 5 perceived threats from Beijing, including infiltration, economic enticement, and attempts to erode Taiwan's sovereignty and national identity. Lai labeled China a, quote, foreign hostile force, end quote, under Taiwan's Anti-Infiltration Act, drawing a swift and angry response from Beijing. The PLA's current drills follow a noticeable pause, likely timed to avoid disrupting high-profile events in China, such as the China Development Forum and the Boao Forum, which hosted foreign business leaders and dignitaries. Eurasia Group analysts Ava Shen and Amanda Xiao, in a note yesterday, argue that this reflects Beijing's effort to balance domestic posturing with its international investment narrative. Nevertheless, the show of force has alarmed Taiwan. Its Ministry of National Defense confirmed that 71 Chinese aircraft, including drones, and 21 naval ships had encircled the island by early Tuesday afternoon. The PLA aircraft carrier Shandong entered Taiwan's self-declared response zone for the first time, approaching within 24 nautical miles of Taiwan's coast, in unprecedented proximity. Coast Guard vessels were also deployed on Taiwan's eastern flank in greater numbers than during past drills, reflecting a steady tightening of China's encirclement strategy. Taiwan's Defense Minister, Wellington Koo, stated that the drills not only threaten regional peace, but also reveal China's intent to, quote, undermine the international order. End quote. He cited recent corruption scandals within the PLA as evidence that Beijing should, quote, focus on its own internal issues. End quote. Despite sharp political divisions in Taiwan, the opposition KMT joined the government in condemning Beijing's drills. However, some KMT lawmakers criticized the administration for lacking a tangible deterrent to respond to PLA incursions. Lawmaker Jessica Chen, for example, expressed, quote, our government has not done anything, end quote, warning that continued inaction could embolden China's military strategy. Internationally, this week US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reaffirmed Washington's commitment to Indo-Pacific deterrence. Analysts with the European Values Center suggest the PLA's drills are also aimed at influencing US policy, Taiwan's public opinion, and reinforcing Xi Jinping's domestic image as a strongman amid growing scrutiny and discontent within the country. The narrative war has become especially ugly too. Shortly after the drills commenced, the Eastern Theater Command's official WeChat account released a dehumanizing cartoon series titled Shell, depicting Taiwan President William Lai Ching-te as a literal parasite destroying the island from within. The three-part series, Parasite Poisoning Taiwan Island, Parasite Hollowing Island Out, and Parasite Courting Ultimate Destruction, claims to illustrate how Lai's pro-independent stance is corroding Taiwan's foundations. State media outlet The Global Times proclaimed that the cartoons, quote, serve as a visual warning. Seeking Taiwan independence will bring war and devastation. End quote. Okay. That is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.